The 14th Amendment says if you're born in the United States, you're a U.S. citizen, but President Trump doesn't think so. Here's the breakdown. President Trump signed an executive order when he took office again to end birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship means if you are born in this country, possibly to parents who are in the country illegally, you are still considered a U.S. citizen. So what happened today? The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3, saying some federal judges are overstepping their powers and should not be able to issue a nationwide block. President Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi held a press conference immediately after that ruling, basically celebrating it as a big win. But the Supreme Court did not rule on the merits of it. Basically, they did not say if Trump's executive order is constitutional or not. Attorney General Pam Bondi told the media that she thinks the Supreme Court will rule on if it's legal or not later this fall.
The Supreme Court ruled that the nationwide injunctions on birthright citizenship is illegal, just like I said it was. And I already basically explained to y'all that what they've been doing with birthright citizenship is having people from different nations, countries, whatever you want to call it, coming here to America, right? Then they have a kid here, then all of a sudden that kid is considered American, and they get all the benefits over the real American people who are the quote-unquote Black Americans. Not only that, they're taking positions of power, such as politicians, the senators and the mayors, the judges, so on and so forth. They're not even supposed to have that because they're technically not from this land. So when you have people from other lands ruling another land, what you think they're really doing? They're destroying the land that they own and taking all the resources and taking it back to their homelands. That's exactly why the GOV is like it is now, before Trump got back in office, draining the swamp. That's how our enemies are literally running the country. We have people that don't like us running the country that we own. And they're doing all this by fraud and all these psyops that I keep telling everybody about the truth. So check it. Trump just made this post not too long ago. Giant win in the United States Supreme Court. Even the birthright citizenship hoax has been indirectly and hit hard. Think about why he said hoax. That's why I keep saying it's a psyop to make it seem like one thing when really it's another. And also he adds it had to do with the babies of slaves the same year, not the scamming of our immigration process. Like I said, they've been skipping this whole process by using quote-unquote birthright citizenship. But the thing is, a lot of people that got the birthright citizenship for being born here, if this is reversed, this means the ones that was born here that didn't have citizen parents isn't even a citizen anymore. And as I mentioned, a lot of people in the positions of power, which is who we call the quote-unquote elites, they are literally not even citizens. Their parents was never a citizen. They skipped the immigration process and just had a baby here. Then trained their baby up how to use universal laws against the people of the land. That's how they defrauded and stole everything that we already had. But everything is still connected to our QV trust, and they can't hide that, and everything has to be returned to the owner of that trust. As in the original Americans who are not citizens because we've left out this whole process, but most don't even know that. And like I always say, I got proof that I'm not even a citizen, but I get violated every time I show proof or any kind of paperwork to prove what I'm saying. So all our birthrights and inheritance should be returned. And also, I'm not sure y'all heard about a new inheritance law that's coming into play. And they're doing that because how would it be fair if there's people that have been inheriting things that have been stolen the whole time? Not only that they've been inheriting stolen property and land, they haven't been paying the taxes that they should have been paying because they're not even from this land. And when you come over to this land from another country, you're automatically a quote-unquote immigrant trying to be a citizen. And y'all are the ones that's supposed to pay the taxes, not the people of the land. But the twist of that is that a lot of these people have been getting them high-paying jobs through all that DEI money, which is for everyone from every country besides the original American. And all that extra funding they've been getting through all these other programs through the DEI that help support businesses that we all see don't make any kind of profit at all, but yet it's still running. Because a lot of this stuff was just a front, just to make people that look like me work non-stop our whole lives while everyone sits back and relax. Because they're literally not from this land. We are, and we're basically being slaves while they just sit there and be the slave owner chilling at the crib, making 5, 10, 20 times more than the people that's working for them when they're not lifting a finger. And I don't want to hear none of that stuff. Oh, we gotta do this paperwork, all this and this and that. Nigga, AI could have been doing that before we were born. Just like when the pandemic started, we seen everybody get sent home, every job that got sent home and can work at home is completely fake. It's a front, and they've been using the government money to fund everybody else while they skim off the top. Once y'all get to see what the system really is like, it's gonna make you angry. It's gonna make everything else make sense. But of course, a lot of people know they're on the bad side of it, so they're gonna try to gaslight you. And these are the ones that's over here saying Trump is doing this for white supremacy. It's literally freeing the quote-unquote black people. Shit crazy. But anyways, quick rant. Hope y'all picked up what I put down. Y'all know how I keep it. Y'all be gods. Peace.
Based on what the Supreme Court did today, if anybody is having any conversations around birthright citizenship or citizenship as a whole, if you do not know who this man is, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because it's as a result of Dred Scott that birthright citizenship can exist. Dred Scott was enslaved by a U.S. Army surgeon by the name of Dr. John Emerson. Emerson took Mr. Scott to an area which would be considered between Illinois and Wisconsin, which at the time, slavery was illegal. When Emerson died, Dred Scott tried to buy his and his wife's freedom from Emerson's widow, to which she refused. And this man, in the 1800s, sued her. This black man's case went to the Supreme Court in the 1800s. And one of the most infamous quotes that sets the precedence for how we are still treated in this country till this day as Black Americans was stated by Chief Justice Robert B. Taney, that Black people have no rights that a white man is bound to respect. The Dred Scott ruling of 1857 said that Black people were not citizens and that we were not even allowed to sue in federal court, that Congress had no power to ban slavery, which invalidated the Missouri Compromise, and that Mr. Dred Scott had no legal standing, although he was in a state where enslavement was illegal. Dred Scott passed 1 year later, never to have seen the abolishment of slavery in the 13th Amendment, nor the rise of birthright citizenship with the 14th Amendment. So let him be a reminder that citizenship has always been racialized and contested.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah.
Did you see the Supreme Court ruled against birthright citizenship today?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
It's a classic play from the authoritarian handbook, weakening of the judicial and consolidation of power into the executive, and unfortunately it's coming from the judicial branch itself.
How so?
Well, the ruling isn't really about birthright citizenship directly, although it potentially affects it. The core of the ruling is really about whether federal judges can place stays or injunctions on executive orders by the president. In this case, the executive order was that Trump is trying to rule that children of two undocumented immigrants shouldn't get birthright citizenship if they're born on U.S. soil, contrary to what our Constitution says. And when he signed that executive order, a federal judge said, no, you can't do that. This is against our Constitution. And this order cannot go into effect until the judicial branch has had a chance to review its legality. And what the Supreme Court has ruled is that federal judges don't have the authority to do that they are overreaching what the Constitution allows them to do by limiting presidential authority.
Why would the Supreme Court want to take away power from the judicial branch?
Well, the Supreme Court is basically compromised at this point, right? Of these 6 judges that voted for this, 3 of them were directly appointed by President Trump himself and widely considered to be unqualified for their roles. And the other 3 were nominated by previous Bush presidents. So these are entirely Republican judges, at least half of which are unqualified, voting along party lines for a weakening of their own position. And this isn't the first time they've done that, right? Earlier, about a year ago, they also voted that the president has effective immunity from any actions he takes when he is acting in the official capacity of the president. So basically the president can commit a crime and have at least presumptive immunity for it because he is the president, which is part of where you get these no kings protests from. It's saying the president is not held to the rule of law. And in this case, it's just a further weakening of the rule of law.
Do you think Trump's ultimate goal here is to end birthright citizenship?
Absolutely. So ending birthright citizenship is one of the goals of Project 2025, which is nearly 50% complete at this point, despite the Trump administration's previous claims that they knew nothing about Project 2025 and had no affiliation. It's one of the many racist policies of the project, and unfortunately the Supreme Court has made it even easier to do that.
Well, and I was saying with y'all out there, check this out. Here we go again. If it ain't one thing, it's another. Listen, you've been hearing Trump his border czar and a bunch of his Republican partners saying, if you don't like what we're doing to your parents by getting them out of our country because they don't have no paperwork or anything, and you don't like it, well, do us a big favor and y'all can go right along with them. You've been hearing them say this for months, right? Now, we've been seeing millions and millions and millions and millions of people out in them streets protesting like a motherfucker, fighting against this shit, right? So I guess Trump say, you know what? I'm going to fuck with some bills and shit, and I'm finna try to get some things passed. Let's just get rid of all of them. Fuck it. If you was born here and your parents wasn't legal, fuck it. You're going to go right along with them. Let's make it easier for us, right? Listen, y'all don't see what's going on. Y'all, and it's right in front of your face. What is going on is you got AI, you got these robots, and you got some shit that's getting ready to change. We're going into a whole shift. Now, the people of the United States, the citizens that they say are real citizens here, oh, don't worry. Right now it's looking like it's all against them people. We're going to be next, but it ain't going to look like they got. You know what I'm saying? They going to try to slave your ass out. You know what I'm saying? They going to try to, you know what I'm saying, have just enough people over here in the United States so when the real civil war and all that shit break out, they think that they're going to have control over the people. So you have to get rid of the help. You know what I'm saying? Not the help working in a job or out here doing landscaping and out here, you know what I'm saying, on the roof. I'm talking about the help that's going to help you in the fight that's getting ready to happen in the United States. So you have to clear a lot of folks out so you can try to gain control over the people that's in this bitch. And then once they send y'all where y'all going at, y'all gonna have fucking problems with your governments over there in Mexico and wherever countries that you're dealing with, because they're gonna try to go to a one world government, man. You know what I'm saying? It's some real shit happening around your fucking head and y'all don't see this shit. Why would you fuck with a bill like that, you know what I'm saying, knowing that it's gonna cause disruption all around this motherfucker? It's gonna, man, listen, y'all don't see it, man. Y'all stay up hot, though. Get it out the mud.
Every time that birthright citizenship is mentioned, I have to bring up the 14th Amendment. And the history of the 14th Amendment is that it was established in order to make former slaves humans under the law. All black people, right? Because remember, they were fractions of people, or they were property, right? Some people say that, oh, not like most countries don't have birthright citizenship. We should be so lucky and feel so fortunate that the US actually allows that to happen. Well, most countries were not fucking founded by slavery in their entirety. And this was a recognition of the people who built this country to make them people. If you think about it, the 13th Amendment was created to end slavery. But there was a little clause that was like, oh, actually, everyone's free unless they're a criminal, right? So why do you think we have such a crazy prison industrial complex and mostly black people end up in it? Because now we get free slavery out of it. So that ability to say that some people are human and some people are subhuman, that's essentially what's happening with taking away birthright citizenship right now. So if you think that you're safe, if you think that you are fine, because you were born in the States, or you're not a criminal, and it just means that you're next. You're not safe, you're next. They are going to keep reducing the label of what it means to be human under the law. You're gonna get your rights taken away, your due process rights, your, like, they can basically, like, kidnap you in the middle of the night and disappear you. Like, that was happening with slaves, right? Because they weren't considered people. So if you think this is cool, humane, to let more humans be demonized, sorry to break it to you, but, like, they're coming for you next.
Wow. They did it. The Supreme Court has officially limited nationwide injunctions. This is a huge win for the president. Although this is from the birthright citizenship case, it's about much more than just birthright citizenship. This goes for all his executive orders. This is basically the ball game. I went to Yale Law School where I focus on constitutional law, so I'll explain it to you as simply as possible because you need to understand how this would all work. First, Daria, what's a nationwide injunction? It's basically an order from a federal judge stopping an action for the whole country, not just their district. And as a reminder, this is basically what's been holding the line against DJT and his team and their implementation of all their Project 2025 agenda and goals. And the court today said, hey, actually, you can't do that anymore. The decision was a 6-3 split along the usual conservative and liberal line, with Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing the opinion of the majority. This is the most important key line in the entire majority opinion. Court writes, no one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so. So effectively what the court here is saying is no matter how wrong or unconstitutional or illegal the executive's policy is, federal district judge in New York, California, Seattle, wherever, cannot stop him, at least not on behalf of the entire country. So therefore, the individual that's affected either has to 1, find a lawyer and sue, 2, join a class action lawsuit, or 3, in some rare and special cases, the state will take it up for them. Now stick with me because this is where the tricky part comes in. Because this could create a situation where a child that's born in New Jersey is a citizen, but just across the river in Pennsylvania, they're not. And to be clear, the birthright citizenship question wasn't decided in the decision today. This was more of a procedural ruling than a substantive one. And right now, the order has been halted for 30 days. Going forward, this can also be used by a Democratic president. It could apply it to federal student loans, pew-pew control, whatever. Now, I've read a lot of Supreme Court opinions. I can honestly say Justice Sonia Sotomayor's dissent in this case is one of the most powerful dissents I've ever read. I'm going to read part of it for you here, because it's going to be studied and remembered for decades to come. She writes, children born in the United States and subject to its laws are United States citizens. That has been the legal rule since the founding. This court once attempted to repudiate it, holding in Dred Scott v. Sanford, the children of enslaved Black Americans were not citizens. To remedy that grievous error, Congress passed the 14th Amendment. There it has remained accepted and respected by Congress, by the executive, and by this court until today. No right is safe in the new legal regime that the court creates. Today, the threat is to birthright citizenship. Tomorrow, a different administration may try to seize arms from law-abiding citizens or prevent people of certain faiths from gathering to worship. The majority holds that absent cumbersome class action litigation, courts cannot completely enjoin even plainly unlawful policies unless doing so is necessary to afford the formal parties complete relief. That holding renders constitutional guarantees meaningful in name only for any individuals who are not parties to a lawsuit. Because I will not be complicit in so grave an attack on our system of law. I dissent.
Yup, this is it right here. Plus, I'm not understanding why this concept is so hard to grasp, that blacks are the real indigenous people of America, especially if it's already been proven that we were the first people on Earth. Common sense should have just told you that we migrated everywhere. Right, but y'all want to be very selective about the places that we could have went. You know what I'm saying? And the most disrespectful thing about black people even have to explain themselves about being indigenous to America is that, bro, if we already agreed that I was the first nigga on the planet, what makes you think I wasn't smart enough to create a boat and sail out in the waters? Like, y'all acting like Europeans were the only people capable of traveling. Like it was too hard for a nigga to say, damn, let's put this wood in the water and see what happens. What the fuck? You know what? We just gonna start repoing y'all. All you fake $5 ass Indians, your shit getting repoed starting today, bro. We ain't doing no more explanation. I'm just gonna say what it is, and you just gonna have to take it for what it is, but I don't wanna hear nothing come out your mouth. You just gonna get slapped shit.
Was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant It's a giant, and they should be very proud, and our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today.
Long story short, what you're basically hearing is that the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Trump because Trump had basically signed an executive order that said that we needed to end birthright citizenship in the United States of America. And now, of course, I'm going to do some review videos of some misinformation that people crying about and all of that. And so that'll be released later on today. But basically what has happened is that he did an executive order to basically kill birthright citizenship because there were a lot of people that were coming in the country that were using this loophole to then get citizenship for their children. So, for example, the Asian community is huge, China in particular, for doing that. And that they were looking to get their children dual citizenship. So what they would do is they would come over here under the guise of just coming on vacation, but in reality, they were really trying to make sure that they had their babies here and they were pregnant. And so what they would do is they would come over to the country and then they would have their children here on American soil. And then they would take their children back to China, or when they would come back or whatever, their children would then be granted citizenship in the United States of America because they were born on American soil. Similarly, the same thing was happening when it came to children of illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants that came over here in the United States of America. Parents would have children here in the United States of America, and that's why you see so many people on social media saying, yeah, my parents came over here undocumented, and they deserve to be here because they've been here for a long time. They never filed to get their papers. They never actually went through the immigration process. Some of them were actually committing additional crimes and so on and so forth. And so you had a bunch of people that weren't really from this culture talking negatively about the United States of America while not at the same time adding value. And they feel entitled to be here because their parents illegally came here and they had children.
You need to start carrying proof of citizenship on you. You need to start carrying proof of citizenship on you. Just a driver's license is not necessarily proof of citizenship. Just a state ID is not necessarily proof of citizenship. Julio Noriega was just a 54-year-old man from Chicago, U.S. citizen from Chicago, was put into a van, detained for 10 hours. And the only reason he came back home that night was because he had proof of citizenship in his wallet. I've been saying it for a minute. Get your passport card. Yes, get them both, even if you're not planning to travel. A passport is proof of citizenship. A passport card is proof of citizenship. Yes, we're at the point that people have to start carrying their papers on them, especially people in the Latino community, especially if you speak a language other than English when you're outside. Everybody stay safe. All Mr. Noriega was doing was just walking down the street looking for a job, and he was just one document away from not going home that night. Get your proof of citizenship, carry it on you. Make sure you take a picture of that front page of that passport. Make sure that the people you love know where you keep your sensitive documents, because everybody's just trying to make it home at the end of the day.
Listen, black people, the ruling on birthright citizenship, I personally don't have any problem with it. I have no smoke with it. I have no drama with it. I don't want it to be retroactive. I got a lot of brown people that are friends, a lot of Latinos that are my amigos. But moving forward, I have absolutely no problem with the ruling, regardless of how it goes. You heard what the man said? The 14th Amendment was put in place for the descendants of slaves. Last time I checked, me and my people, my homies, my brothers, my dogs, we the descendants of the so-called slaves. So what are we mad at that? He ain't talking to us. Learn to pick your face. Stay out of grown people business. Ain't that what your mom used to tell you? I have no problem with it. Don't fix it right there on the bottom.
Big motherfucking facts. And Cheeto told them this shit. Mind you, Cheeto is the children of immigrants. He like literally first or second gen. He's first gen on one side and second gen on the other. Like, to be fucking honest. So there's that, right? Like, even his grandparents didn't speak English. Like, so that's the weird shit. But you know, that's white folk for you. Okay? But the crazy thing about it was that a lot of the immigrants groups don't understand African immigrants, Caribbean immigrants, Latino immigrants. Okay, Just like when y'all hear us say foundational black American, right? Foundational black American. Foundational white Americans exist. To jeopardize foundational black Americans would be to jeopardize foundational white Americans. There was 3 groups here: indigenous, white, black. That's it. Okay? That's it. All right? So, and then all of those 3 groups are all mixed up with each other too. That's another thing. So, quite a bit of black Americans have indigenous blood. That's true. Okay? We also have European blood. That's true. Okay? So we're predominantly these things. We're predominantly white. We're predominantly black. We're predominantly indigenous. Okay? So that's that. But yeah, I said, why would y'all think that y'all was going to go in them polls? Like, if we're on the game of Survivor, y'all thought y'all was going to go to the polls and vote off the one POC group that has an immunity idol? Because we know that indigenous have an immunity idol. We know that foundational white Americans have an immunity idol. They didn't know that foundational black Americans have an immunity idol. They didn't know that. They did not know that shit. Okay? So I just hope they learn from this shit and they never do this dumbass shit again. I hope they figure that shit out. Okay? But yeah, Trump absolutely got his ass online. Many Republicans have. And said that they wanted what they want is for the 14th Amendment to be interpreted the way in which it was enacted, which was for the enslaved, newly emancipated, and their descendants. Nobody else. What's fucking that up and making that difficult for that to happen is the Wong Art Kim birthright case. Okay, the Chinese, the boy that went to China and then came back into the country and then sued off of birthright citizenship and won. Okay, that's what's fucking the whole shit up with the birthright citizenship. Okay, and then also, Black Americans became citizens of America before Native Americans became citizens of America. Black Americans became citizens of America in 1863, 1864, 1865, somewhere around that. Native Americans became citizens of America in 1924. Clock it. Have a good day, y'all.
A U.S. citizen can stay out of the United States for the rest of his or her life. Decades, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I got a friend who moved to Brazil 25 years ago. I haven't seen him back in the U.S. since. You always still got to pay your taxes.
The irony of a white man trying to end birthright citizenship in America when a white man stole America from indigenous people. How does white people keep getting away with this?
Because of the Supreme Court's decision in the birthright citizenship case, those dark states is where the executive order goes into effect if no new lawsuits are filed in 30 days.
Yeah, bro. You feel me? Now everybody about to feel this shit. Everybody that was disrespecting us, asking them condescending ass questions like, where are you from? Where are you really from? Who are you? You don't know who you are. You don't know who you want to be. You guys are confused. You guys are this. We've always known we were from the United States. Everybody has always known we were from the fucking United States. Now, everybody who's basically turned against us is feeling the wrath of the... Have you noticed that everybody who's turned against Black Americans and has betrayed Black Americans is feeling the wrath of Donald Trump and his administration? Native Americans are getting embarrassed. People of immigrant backgrounds are getting embarrassed. Being told the same shit we've been telling you on the internet. Y'all don't want to motherfucking acknowledge it. Now you have to fucking acknowledge it. Because I'll be damned if my kids and my grandkids have to be bullied by foreigners on a land that they're ethnically from. Y'all got us fucked up.
I am so glad that Donald Trump spoke on the issue of birthright citizenship that Democrats have been so dead set on fighting, and said that birthright citizenship was for the benefit of African Americans. It was added in 1868 for the benefit of slaves and their children, not for the benefit of migrants who have come to this country illegally over these past few years, who have walked across the Texas border and had babies in this country and abused the 14th Amendment because they automatically know that if they have a baby in this country, then that baby is a United States citizen. Many women over these past few years have conveniently forgotten to disclose the fact that they were pregnant because they knew that once they crossed the border and had a baby on American soil, that baby is automatically an American citizen. Why is it okay, in Democrats' point of view, for people like migrants who have not earned the right to be in this country to automatically be given rights that black people, African American people in this country had to fight so hard to get? Since Democrats claim to be the party of inclusion, the party who fights for rights, fights for the African American people, why are you so content giving away rights to somebody else who are not even citizens, who don't even belong in this country?
The Supreme Court doesn't know what it's just done. Today, the Supreme Court ruled to limit the power of lower courts to issue nationwide injunctions. Now, some of you might ask, how was this even brought about? Donald Trump has been signing executive order after executive order after executive order, many of which have come out to be flat out unconstitutional. And lower courts have been issuing nationwide injunctions to put a pause on these executive orders until everything is sorted out in court. Not too long ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order that would effectively end birthright citizenship. There was a nationwide injunction against it because it's flat out unconstitutional. And so Donald Trump took it up to the Supreme Court. And they did not argue about the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. This case was merely about lower courts being able to put pauses on executive orders. So essentially, with the Supreme Court's ruling, Donald Trump can issue this executive order ending birthright citizenship, upend millions of Americans' lives until the Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality of upending birthright citizenship. So to my Republicans who may be jumping for joy over this, I want you to think about something. If a Democrat gets in office and they start signing a bunch of executive orders to flood the courts, as Donald Trump has been doing, and one of those executive orders says all guns in the United States of America must be banned, lower courts cannot put a pause on it. And if the courts are already full with a bunch of cases that may be unconstitutional, it's going to take time for that to get to the Supreme Court, doing damage to the American system and democracy. And so now Donald Trump can implement this executive order to upend birthright citizenship, and for the foreseeable future, until the Supreme Court actually rules on that very key portion, people's lives will be upended. Folks, this is how a dictatorship begins. This is how the great American experiment goes wrong. There will be massive negative implications for the Supreme Court's decision today.
I don't want to be that person, but with the Supreme Court ruling on birthright citizenship tomorrow, I just want anyone who either voted for Trump, considers themselves MAGA, is a Republican, or just knows a lot about the Supreme Court case to give me some reassurance, any reassurance at all, that Trump isn't going to try to backlog on birthright citizenship. Like, from my understanding, he's only going to go back 5 years in terms of rolling back birthright citizenship. But in my head, I'm also thinking, what's to stop him from going back 50 years, 100 years, 150 years? So if you have anything at all that can put my mind at ease about him not trying anything funny with birthright citizenship, leave it in the comments below, or Duet or Stitch, or however you feel like replying.
All right, so to fully understand the 14th Amendment, you have to understand the interpretation of it and what was going on at the time it was ratified, what had just happened in American history. So all of you guys that hated history class and didn't want to learn about it, felt like it was, it's coming back to bite you in the behind. So the citizenship clause is what we're talking about. That's the most important in this time right now. And I'm going to just go over it really quick. So it was in response to the Dred Scott decision that stated that African Americans could not become citizens. This was back in the 1800s, right? 1857. So the citizenship clause constitutionalized the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which granted citizenship to all born within the United States except the children of foreign diplomats. Because foreign diplomats are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States of America. Again, foreign diplomats are not subject to the jurisdiction. So when you're talking about the 14th Amendment, you have to actually first start with the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So that was, it was the first United States federal law to define citizenship. It was enacted April 9th of 1866 and then reenacted in 1870, which is not something that's surprising because it happens all the time. It was mainly intended to protect the civil rights of persons of African descent, born in or brought to, born in or brought to the United States. Not anybody who immigrated unlawfully. Not somebody who decided to bring themselves. African descendants that were born in or brought to the United States in 1866. Around that time, 1866. So if they wanted to go back to 1866, which is a year after the Civil War ended, who you think is... Okay, anyway, we're not going to go there. So the act was passed in Congress in 1866, and then it was vetoed, and, it was back and forth like most laws are. As I've said before, I am not a constitutional attorney. However, in my job duties, I have had to read and interpret a lot of things, and I've taken classes to learn how to do that. If I want to be an attorney, I probably could, but don't want to do that. But I do understand one thing when it comes to the law, and maybe I'm wrong. Somebody out there, if I'm wrong, just let me know I'm wrong and correct it. But the Supreme Court is supposed to determine the intention of the law, right? The spirit of the law. And if the spirit of the law was to constitutionalize the Civil Rights Act of 1866, then it wasn't intended ever for everybody coming into this country. It was only intended for those who were brought here against their will. So if that's the case, the Supreme Court could really see it that way, because that's what it looks like to me, because basically the Civil Rights Act of 1866 constitutionalized the fact that those of African descent who were born in the United States or who were brought to the United States were citizens, which means their following lines were citizens.
Trump is a liar. He is not just going after illegal immigrants. He is going after green card holders, asylum seekers, visa holders, people with temporary status. Not only are all of those people being affected, but legal immigrants, people who have lived in our country for decades, are also being targeted. And to make matters even worse, when immigrants are showing up to their court dates, ICE is detaining them while they're leaving the facility. We want them to follow the law, but when they follow the law, we're going to deport them? It was obviously never about deporting illegal criminals, because if it was, they wouldn't be showing up to people's workplaces, right? It was always about Trump not wanting a certain demographic in our country, and that's the bottom line.
Until one of these African Americans, one of us, you feel me, get caught up and being mistaken as illegal.
This is Jermaine Thomas. He's a Texas man born to U.S. soldiers on a military base, and he was deported. Now, his father is Jamaican and spent almost 20 years in the U.S. military serving this country. It all started with an eviction. He was getting evicted from his apartment, and when he was taking his stuff out of it, Police came. Police said that they got a call about somebody that had a dog tied up. He was there with his dog. They then asked him if his dog had immunization paperwork. When they checked the dog's chip, they said they didn't see the dog's name. So then the police then confiscated his dog. And then they arrested him for trespassing from the apartment that he was getting evicted from. He spent 30 days in a Texas jail where he lost his job as a janitor. And they gave him paperwork that he signed to be released under conditions. He was then transferred to an ICE detention facility. It was then that it dawned on him what was happening. He was in a room full of Spanish speakers, and he asked them where they were going, and they told him Nicaragua. He started banging on the door, and he told the ICE personnel, "I have a Supreme Court case named after me." 10 years ago, Jermaine Thomas was at the center of a Supreme Court case to determine whether or not children that were born on U.S. military bases should be considered American citizens. He was deported to Jamaica, a country he has no citizenship in and has never been to. And technically, he's considered a citizen of nowhere. He doesn't know how to get a job. He said that he's unfamiliar with patois, and the Jamaican government isn't even sure if it's legal for him to be there. If it could happen to him, it could happen to you, it could happen to me, it can happen to any of us.
No president can unilaterally change the Constitution on a whim. Only constitutional amendments can change the Constitution. That is why just a few moments ago, I, along with the Attorneys General of Illinois, Oregon, and Washington, sued President Trump in the Western District of Washington. Another group of attorneys general are filing a separate case in the District of Massachusetts. While the president has broad authority on matters of immigration, our lawsuit asserts that the president acted far outside the bounds of his legal authority in issuing this order, and allowing federal agencies to implement and enforce it will harm thousands of Arizonans and the state at large. Unlawfully stripping U.S. citizens of their right to citizenship will impact their future ability to vote, travel abroad, secure housing, access health care, seek employment, run for public office, serve on juries, and more generally, participate fully in American society. This lawless order is not only nakedly unconstitutional, it is an attack on families and children in this state and across this country. And it will cause irreparable damage and harm to Arizonans. This order would risk repeating one of the worst mistakes in our nation's history. The 14th Amendment protects the rights of every American citizen, no matter their ancestry. Only in a nation where every child is born with the same inalienable, God-given rights can any of us truly be free. That is why we cannot and will not allow the Constitution to be undermined in this way, and this illegal order will not stand.